Through the ghoul-guarded gateways of slumber, past the wan-mooned abscesses of night, I have lived all my lives without number. I have sounded all things with my sight, and I struggle and shriek ere the daybreak, being driven to madness with fright. I have whirled with the earth at the dawning, when the sky was a vaporous flame. I have seen the dark universe yawning, where the black planets roll without aim, where they roll with their horror unheeded, without knowledge or luster or name. I had drifted o'er seas without ending, under sinister gray clouded skies, that the many-forked lightning is rending, that resounds with hysterical cries, with the moans of invisible demons, that out of the green waters rise. I have plunged like a deer through the arches of the hoary primordial grove, where the oaks feel the presence that marches and stalks on where no spirit dares rove. I have stumbled by cave-ridden mountains that rise barren and bleak from the plain. I have drunk from the fog-fetid fountains that ooze down to the marsh and the main, and in hot, cursed tarns I have seen things I care not to gaze on again. I have scanned the vast ivy-clad palace, I have trod its untenanted hall, where the moon writhing up from the valleys shews the tapestried things on the wall, strange figures discordantly woven, which I cannot endure to recall. I have peered from the casement in wonder at the moldering meadows around, at the many-roofed village laid under the curse of a grave-girdled ground. I have haunted the tombs of the ages, I have flown on the pinions of fear, where the smoke-belching Erebus rages, where the Jokuls loom snow-clad and drear, and in realms where the sun of the desert consumes what it never can cheer. I was old when the first pharaohs mounted the jeweled deck throne by the Nile. I was old in those epics uncounted, when I only was vile. Oh, great was the sin of my spirit, and great is the reach of its doom. Not the pity of heaven can cheer it, nor can respite be found in the tomb. Down in the infinite eons come beating the wings of unmerciful gloom. Through the ghoul-guarded gateways of slumber, past the wan moon abscesses of night, I have lived all my lives without number. I have sounded all things with my sight, and I struggle and shriek ere the daybreak, being driven to madness with fright.
All right, good morning, everybody. It's Larsen Live. It's April Fool's Day. Surprise, that's the joke with the title of the stream. Nothing is right with the world. I fooled you. Yeah. So anyway, my sardonic laughter aside, we open up our show with Julian Velard's musical interpretation of H.P. Lovecraft's Nemesis, which, by an astonishing coincidence, has the same meter as Billy Joel's Piano Man. Unfortunately, each stanza has an extra line, which kind of throws the rhythm off a bit. And Mr. Velard pronounced a few words wrong, like he said abscesses instead of abysses. He said fog-fetid instead of frog-fetid. But overall, it's very good. Bonus points, of course, for using the theremin, which is naturally what a multi-tentacled eldritch horror would be using instead of a harmonica. Eldritch abominations don't play loser instruments like harmonicas. I say, ignoring that I myself am a harmonica player. However, eldritch abominations might have panpipers, as Robert Howard's Valley of the Worm taught us. But anyway, how is everybody? Pony Throat, starting off saying, I assume this stream's going to be about the Nashville shooting. Yes, it is. Not all of it, of course. There is some good news, believe it or not. But, yeah. Yeah, let's just get right to it then. So, in Nashville, of course, and Audrey Hale, I don't know what, I think it's Aiden Hale is, the trans name. I know it's not Alan Hale. That would be very darkly amusing if the skipper went on a mass shooting, but, No, sorry, I should not be making jokes about this. Yes, a trans man pops off, walks into a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee, and kills 6 people, 3 children and 3 adults. Why did this happen? Well, allegedly, this person was an alumnus of the school. They may or may not have been abused, and they wanted to take vengeance. Now, I should point out, let's just get this out of the way, that this person wrote a manifesto, as many mass shooters tend to. Also, say the line, FBI. He was on our radar. Yay. Because of course he was. Yes, this person was basically under, stewardship, or what is it called where, insane people are, conservatorship. Yeah, this person was basically living with their parents under conservatorship. They wrote a manifesto, which I hear whisperings that this person was basically calling for armed resistance against, the evil right-wing Christo-fascists who are oppressing the poor trans people. What's not helping matters is that within 90 seconds of this mass shooting going off, unfortunately not soon enough to save more lives, but yes, square-jawed, blue-eyed white man cop shot this person dead. Which doesn't help the whole, fascist thing. Just to say this guy, Metro Nashville police officer Rex Engelbert does look like a square-jawed, clean-toothed, Aryan poster boy. Not intentionally, of course. He was also assisted by Michael Colazzo, also a 9-year veteran of the cops. And, that's good for them. Now, first of all, now that we are talking about the events that immediately happened, people immediately jumped upon the quick and successful reaction of the Memphis police, Metro Nashville. I keep saying Memphis, wrong, Tennessee City. Yes, they are reacting to the immediate and successful reaction of Nashville police versus the utterly incompetent Uvalde cops to compare mass shooting to mass shooting. I should point out that the Uvalde cops were literally a bunch of, squat fat bodies who puttered around with their thumbs up their asses while many, many more children were massacred. And you know what? I mentioned this last week, how the Uvalde cops were like, he's got a gun, I can't go in. I really hope that, in what semblance passes for American culture these days, that the phrase Uvalde cop becomes like a byword for cowardice. I really do. So, in the overwhelming darkness that is 2023, at least some goodness is coming out. Just to say, at least some cops are somewhat competent. Let's look at some comments. Hey, let's see. Ponythroat says, I don't think enough people are creating the shooting to Ember's Ghost Squad. I don't know what that means. I assume it's some kind of Troon reference. If only there was something about this person that could have told people they were mentally ill. Yes. Hey. Ponythroat also likes the fact that they used an AR pistol with a configuration that screams this gun was paid for by the FBI. Ponythroat then says these two policemen were literally 100 times more effective than the entire Uvalde Police Department. Yes, again, every day I read more about the debacle at Uvalde. Or is it Uvalde? I don't know. It's probably Uvalde. I mean, it's a Spanish name, I presume. But, yeah, I said this before. I've said this in a couple of streams, but yeah, Order 227 for police officers now. Anyway, the Covenant Presbyterian School. Now, again, this person did post a manifesto. From what I gather, it did talk about, resisting the evil, Christo-fascists. And I can't help but notice that there's a remarkable amount of sympathy coming out for this shooter. People, talking about, the Trans Day of Vengeance. Protesters stormed the Nashville state capitol building, holding up 7 fingers for 7 victims. Yes, Aiden Hale is apparently a victim here. And, you want to talk about, rhetoric and, stochastic terrorism. I think all the talk about, trans rights or else, a lot of trans people are, toting guns. There's been multiple people, remarkably sympathetic to this person. Literally 3 days before it happened, Chunk Uger of the Young Turks news YouTube channel said trans Americans should get guns. Right-wing lunatics are going to attack them. Gee, I wonder if that kind of rhetoric might have prompted this, whack job to pop off. And by the way, do I need to address the irony of somebody who represents an organization called the Young Turks telling people to do armed resistance against oppressive governments? Do I need to go into detail about that? But of course, Chunk Uger does not believe in the Armenian genocide, as he has illustrated on multiple occasions. Okay, please ignore my landlord who lives upstairs yelling about something or other. Seapunk Messiah says, poorly handled politics all around. I feel if there was a civil, clear-headed debate between two sides, things would be a lot better. But that won't happen. Politics is nothing but knee-jerk reactions and emotional flares. Yes, that's true. Spung Messiah says, where have we heard the day of vengeance before? Cough, cough, incelacalypse, cough, cough. Yeah, I think incels do kind of still hold the tally on mass shootings. That's a little known fact. Like, incels of multiple races have popped off quite a lot in mass shooting events. But then again, the incel to trans pipeline is a documented phenomenon, so, who knows where the incel stops and where the trans starts. Ponythroat says the shooter was also a furry. Yes, I did notice that. People on Twitter were like, oh, look at these whimsical cartoons this person made. In fact, I'm going to try to look that up right now. It's so strange to be using my home computer, because I've been using my work computer, and it's like, it's the buttons are slightly different, so I have to kind of stumble around in typing. Yes, the Daily Mirror says, Nashville school shooter Audrey Hale. It's really hard for me to not say Alan Hale. I'm sorry. Yes, Audrey Hale, not Alan, could have been a children's illustrator, as their artwork was whimsical and childlike, a former teacher has revealed. Well, whoop-de shit. I mean, you know who else made whimsical and childlike artwork? John Wayne Gacy. So, the fact that you draw little cartoons doesn't really make me sympathize with you all that much, to be quite honest. I mean, I draw cartoons on occasion. I mean, it didn't stop me from, having to jump before I was pushed from that brap school. Maybe I should have done. I mean, I don't know why I'm still so upset about getting fired from a sub job at a shit school. I mean, I guess it's the principle of the thing, but yeah, I should have shown that closet case principal my cartoons and caricatures and sketches, and they would have kept me my job. Okay, let's see. C-Punk Messiah says, if my fandom could stop punching itself in the face, that would be nice. Well, yes, I am very much aware of the furry schism, much like the anthropology schism, in that, some furries just want to make their little cartoons, and some furries want to be like weirdo sex fetishists, and that split up the community. Okay, C-Punk Messiah says, don't forget John K. And then Ponythroat says, Larsen got fired. No, I did not get fired. Like a year ago, I got a contract substitute teaching job at a school of brappies. And I mentioned this last time, or a couple streams ago. Yeah, I almost got into a physical altercation with some, 220-pound feral retard, and I'm the one who got punished for it. But yeah, that was a sub job. That was before my full-time job, which is going to be up in a couple of months. And I got to get a new job. At least I didn't get fired from this one. Then C-Punk Messiah says, don't forget John K. Oh yes, how could we forget John K? Although I don't think anybody ever described John K's artwork as being whimsical and childlike. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. I watched plenty of Ren and Stimpy. Whimsical and childlike were not the phrases I would use to describe that show. But yes, I mean, John K should have just thrown cartoons in people's faces to get off, from his charges of, grooming teenage girls. Not to be confused with the other kind of getting off. Anyway, Ponythroat says, anthropologists have a yearly convention called Anthrocon. You can look it up. Oh yes, I'm quite aware of Anthrocon, sir. But yes, to go back to serious news, I mean, yeah, there's a massive amount of really odd sympathy for this person. Like, really lionizing this, innocent transgender victim who, popped off and, like, murdered 6 people. Now, look, I don't know what happened at the school. I mean, I know everybody's jumping to the conclusion about, evil rednecks abusing the poor trans woman, trans man. I don't know. This person was in their 20s, so I don't know if the teachers they killed would have ever taught this person. And certainly the 9-year-old children didn't, abuse this person. This was not warranted. But yes, rhetoric from the good people about how, whiteness needs to be erased and how everybody's, come to get, the poor innocent minorities. That might cause some problems. Yeah, like Chunk Yu-Gi-Oh! Telling trans people to, strap up. I believe Jane Fonda said something similar on The View. In 2010, there was a mass shooting. A black man named Omar Thornton killed 9 of his coworkers, and because the people were allegedly racist towards him. And I believe there was another black guy who shot a bunch of people for the same reason, like another workplace shooting to like punish white people for their sins. So for all the talk about Tucker Carlson or whoever you know stirs up the rhetoric, which I'm certainly not going to doubt that. I'm not a huge Tucker Carlson fan at all, to put it mildly. But I mean, the dude tried to be in the CIA. I don't trust him. But yeah, can we throw it the other way? Like rhetoric can cause violence, especially when you tell a group of people who are, let's be honest, a little unhinged to begin with, that like everybody's gunning for them, and that there's literal trans genocide happening, which is the exact phrase they often use. Something's gonna pop off. And by the way, I should just mention the quote unquote trans genocide. Yeah, literally like less than 50 trans people are murdered a year. Oh, and guess what? Statistics also show literally none of them are murdered by really any white people at all, at least ones that are documented. Certainly not like evil white rednecks with, scary black rifles. C Punk Messiah says you would think the trans community would malign the people who make their community look bad, but no, they defend heinous actions. I did notice how some of the more sensible, LGBT people are trying to distance themselves from this, thankfully. Which, again, I said this a while ago, and, from my experience, talking to, the gay community, it seems to be like it's not one big harmonious family. There's definitely a rift between, the LGBs and the TQS pluses, Ps. Yeah, we can't forget the Ps, because there's P, all right. And, it's good that some of these sensible people are trying to distance themselves from this. C Punk Messiah says, I have a trans sister and some trans friends. I worry about their well-being for this reason. I have 2 trans students. They're nice. I certainly wouldn't want any harm to come to my charges. Obviously, I wish everybody the best and, well-being. But can we please stop with this rhetoric about, like, the literal trans genocide when that's not going on? But no, we got to focus on the whimsical, artwork. The Twitter thread actually posted a painting done by Adolf Hitler. There's a lot of whimsy in that painting. Guess we can ignore what he did. It actually brings up something I was going to talk about a little later, but this is obviously a very big issue. But yeah. I never thought I would see the media so brazenly taking the side of a spree killer, but here we go. And again, I do have to ask how this person got a gun. And, I'm slowly coming around to, like, the idea that, like, people with documented psych profiles and psych issues shouldn't be allowed to own guns. I mean, look, a free people should bear arms. Like, that's, my line in the sand. But I'm sorry, if you have, like, documented psychological issues, I don't think you should be allowed to own a gun at all. And yes, I'm aware that the Soviet Union would abuse psychology to imprison political prisoners. That's always a risk. But, you know, if you're going to have a society in which guns are owned, and I feel we should, then we should also bear the responsibility to be absolutely on point with mental health care. And by the way, thank you, Ronald Reagan, for closing down the insane asylums. Matt Taibbi of Rolling Stone, he wrote a book called Postal shortly after the Columbine shooting. This is 20 years ago, and it's still quite relevant, showing how mass shootings, with the exception of really Charles Starkweather, literally did not happen until the 80s, which is coincidentally when the mental health care system absolutely shat the bed in this country. Pony Throat says, Black Pill, you're living in Weimar, Germany. White Pill, you're living in Weimar, Germany. Yes. I was really hoping that it wouldn't come to like a... Actually, I should rephrase that. I think the pendulum is going to swing very hard to the right. I mean, we're going super left now. And yes, it is left-wing. I don't care what Europeans say. America is extremely left-wing, just not in the traditional, Marxist sense. It's a different kind of leftist. I mean, all this, trans dancing around and, like, inversion of, like, beauty and common decency. I'm certainly not traditionalist and right-wing. But yeah, the pendulum's going to swing hard to the right. And frankly, I'm just hoping that we get a Caesar figure rather than a Hitler figure. Rick says, are the cartoons of Charles Bronson whimsical? I wasn't aware that there were cartoons of Charles Bronson. I know he was in The Simpsons a couple of times. But yes, the Twitter thread is full of pictures of Hitler's artwork, talking about, the whimsy and talent. It's a shame that he had to go off and, genocide millions of people. For the record, Hitler's main issue as an artist was that his people and figural drawings sucked. His landscapes and, like, still lifes are okay, but yeah, his people sucked. But yes, can we not, like, glorify and, like, lionize spree killers? I'd really appreciate that. Okay, let's see. Rick says, I should have specified Charles Bronson, the English prisoner, not the American actor. Ah, yes. If I'm wrong, doesn't he, like, not go by Charles Bronson anymore? He goes by, like, isn't it, like, Santana something? Let me look that up. While I do that, I must say I did really enjoy the Bronson movie with Tom Hardy. Let's see. Yeah, he goes by Charles Salvador now. Born Michael Peterson. Hey. See, Liam Roddy says, morning, gentlemen. Morning, Liam. You just joined us. We were talking about the Covenant Presbyterian school shooting. C-Punk Messiah says it's a slingshot effect. Left-wingers pull hard on the pendulum. Once they lose grip, it's going to swing hard into the far right. You have the old Newton's cradle of politics. But yes, I am aware that Charles Bronson, the prisoner, drew some cartoons. They were in the Bronson movie. And yeah, I suppose they are whimsical. And, I should point out that Charles Bronson, the hardest man in England, killed less people than Audrey Hale ever did. I don't think Bronson ever killed anybody. He just beat the shit out of people. And pissed on gypsies in the middle of empty fields. And according to the movie, he also, fought some dogs or something. I don't know if he actually did that in real life. But yes, I'm aware of the risk of, doing psych profiles. It could very quickly become a, database of people who own guns. But I'm sorry, I just don't think insane people should own guns. Period, stop. If you have any kind of mental instability, you should not be allowed to own a gun. I'm sorry. It's a risk I'm willing to take. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ben Franklin. I'm giving up liberty for a little security. I'm sorry if that makes me a cuck or whatever. But I'm just seeing way too many rainbow-haired loonies popping off and shooting people. And yes, I'm aware that technically, the majority of mass shooting events are gangland drive-bys and things like that. But still, I'm talking specifically about the rando walks into a place and just starts shooting event. Okay, Robert Leonard and Liam Roddy discuss Charles Bronson, the convict. Despite being called the most dangerous man in Britain, he never killed anybody. Bronson's a violent psychopath. Oh, no doubt about it. I'm not saying he's a good person, just saying that he did not kill anybody. Yeah. So yes, as we've seen, if you are the right kind of person, you can, get sympathetic write-ups from the news media about killing, people in mass events. Yeah, speaking of whitewashing people's horrific crimes, apparently there's a children's book about Fidel Castro. There's the, Who Was Blankety Blank, uh, series of children's books. It's who was Fidel Castro? A boy who loved baseball, a lawyer for the poor, the leader of the revolution in Cuba, all the above. Again, you could literally do this with Hitler. It's he was an artist and vegetarian. Mao Zedong was a librarian. Or Audrey Hale was a whimsical child artist. Again, it really is just about, whose side you're on, whether it's the good people, quote unquote, or the bad people. Okay. Let's see. Robert Leonard says the psycho-libertarians went way overboard in making involuntary commitment next to impossible. Oh, with mental asylums? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I know there was, abuse of, the mental health care system. Again, more so in the Soviet Union. But, yeah, I mean, you can ask Rosemary Kennedy about that. I mean, obviously, lobotomies are bad. Involuntary commitment is, sometimes bad. But I think it's better than, what we have now, where every raving derelict is just allowed to walk the streets because of, my community care, which doesn't goddamn exist. So, yeah, thanks, deregulatory, Reagan fanboys. The shit-covered streets of San Francisco and New York are your doing. Because every raving lunatic is just given some SSRIs and thrown onto the street. And by the way, most spree shooters are on mind-numbing cocktails of pharmaceuticals and SSRIs and things like that. Just saying. Ponythroat says she must have been a trans man. An actual woman would never gotten that many kills. That is incorrect, Ponythroat. She was female to male, which, from what I gather from my own experience as a teacher, is that tends to be like kind of moody, like weirdo girls who, 10 years ago would have been cutting themselves and listening to Bauhaus, at least from what I've seen. And, I don't think it's really an exaggeration to say that if this was, 10, 20 years ago, Audrey Hale would have, just been in her room cutting herself with a razor and listening to, The Cure or the Sisters of Mercy. Liam Roddy then says we can't ask Rosemary Kennedy anything after the lobotomy. Well, yes, that goes without saying. Captain Day After Day says Dankula did a video about Charles Bronson's parole hearing. That'll be his Mad Lads videos. Yes, I haven't seen that, but like I said, I did see the Bronson movie, which is very good. You should watch it. Yeah, so in conclusion, as a society, if you're going to own guns, you have to be absolutely on point with mental health care and general non-shittiness. And we've failed to do that. My opinion hasn't really changed because does it need to change? I don't think so. Now, I hate to say fuck Reagan for everything, but yeah, kind of. It really is astounding what kind of lives the average American lived just, 40, 45 years ago. People had good paying jobs. The cities weren't full of human feces. Like, there weren't mass shootings. Wow. And speaking of the decline in society, about an hour before this stream, I was looking at a thread on Twitter of, the old, City Hall subway station in Brooklyn, and it looks like a goddamn cathedral. That's, what is his name? Raphael something or other. He was Spanish. He became an American citizen. He designed it. Yeah, fantastic. Then I realized that modern New York can never have that because the goddamn feral brappies would cover that beautiful, sunroof and beautiful tile floor with, human feces and heroin needles. Just like Grand Central Station used to have, like, these gorgeous, bay windows that would let in literal celestial beams of light into the room every day. Can't have that anymore. And they abandoned the old abandoned station, which you can still see if you take the 6 train down to Brooklyn. If you kind of ride it all the way through, you will pass through that abandoned station. They literally abandoned it just because, it has a curve in it. The trains are too big. I don't see why you couldn't have, like, I don't know, maybe done a transfer stop or, like, adjusted it slightly. But no, fuck beautiful architecture. We need to make everything into urine-soaked hellholes because that's equity. Yeah, America's so fascist that we hand the country over to, like, the lowest dregs of humanity and destroy beautiful architecture. Yeah, that's what fascism is about. Larsen, we object to the term urine-soaked hellhole. You could have said pee-pee-soaked heckhole. Cheerfully withdrawn. Okay. Let's see. Alrighty. Okay, Biff Slankovich says, reduce the number of guns, reduce the mass slaughter. Thank you, Republicans. Well, yes, certainly. I, again, keep guns out of anybody who has any kind of, like, red flag psych profile. I support red flag laws. Also open up the insane asylums again as Liam Roddy says, we destroyed mental health care, and now we're reaping what we sowed. Yes, I agree. And again, Audrey Hale was on the FBI's radar, just like every other mass shooter, and they stood by and did nothing. Almost as if they want it to happen just so they can sow discord and discontent in the country. Wah, wah. Okay, Ponythroat says, I forget how the trans man, trans woman terms apply. Well, sir, the gender modifier in the name trans X refers to the post-operational state. So trans man is a new man. Trans woman is a new woman. Cis woman can't shoot up a place for shit. They only ever get like one kill and then themselves. Yeah, I mean, cis women can't really shoot. I mean, the chickleen is a documented phenomenon, which I've seen firsthand. You know, women, they kind of lean back because their tiny little girl bodies can't hold, like, even a pistol in proper shooting posture. Also, an interesting observation I noted was that, and you know, this isn't me noting it, somebody else noted it, but I found it interesting, is that, like, a trans woman, like a man who becomes a woman, basically becomes like some oversexed streetwalker, essentially. A woman who becomes a trans man becomes the worst sort of like creepy, hunched over incel, you know, spree killer frotteur. Amazing how, you know, transgenders become just like the worst example of their new gender. Or maybe the hardware was bugged to begin with. You know, chicken or the egg situation. Does the gender reassignment surgery turn you into the most degraded form of your new sex? Or were you already degraded and this is just putting a new coat of paint on it? C-Punk Messiah says, with regards to my observation that 10 years ago Audrey Hale would have been cutting herself to the Cure, he says that 10 years ago would have been like My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco and all that emo crap. Ah, yes, yes. I'm remembering now in high school there was a girl who I sat next to in English class. She was a little bit of a cutter and she listened to all that crap. I mean, I really mentioned like Bauhaus because I actually, unlike Panic at the Disco and My Chemical Romance, I actually do like Bauhaus and The Cure and some, you know, goth rock bands. Whereas I have little tolerance for the emo crowd. Rick says, it reminds me of Larsen's Kung Fail became Mad Lads. I think Dankula's a fan. Well, I hope Dankula is a fan. He should promote me so I can get, you know, some of that subscriber, some more subscribers. And yes, I promise you that once the school year ends and I have some free time, I will make proper videos again. Ponythroat says, is the stream going to bring up Christine Weston Chandler getting out of jail? Oh, I didn't know he got out of jail. I mean, in all this excitement, I kind of lost track myself. Wait, no, that sucked. You know, in all this excitement, I kind of lost track myself. All the, you know, trans shenanigans. There's only one insane, violent transsexual I can keep track of at once, dude. Robert Leonard says, Rose Kennedy was lobotomized with the best medical science of the period. Shows how fickle medicine can be. Yes, lobotomy was invented by, I want to say he was Portuguese, the guy. And he won the Nobel Prize for it. Let's see. Yes, Portuguese neurologist Antonio Moniz. Yeah, Nobel Prize, 1949. So, you know, medicine can be a bitch sometimes. You know, there's a lot to be said for George Washington's advice to just let a cold, you know, come as it goes. He says as he died of essentially bloodletting, he was medicated to death. Hey, Ponythroat says CWC is going to visit his mother like the Green Goblin visiting Aunt May and telling her to finish it. Well, there's a lot of comments here. 12 people watching at a time. Wow, this is good. Liam Roddy says, I can't believe CWC hasn't made his way to an internet connection yet if he's truly out. Perhaps Bob up in heaven, cut down that internet. Captain Day After Day says, I went to NYC once. Some dude put a CD in my hand that I had to pay for to avoid a crazy scene. I paid $10 to throw out somebody's garbage. I'm not built for cities. Yes, I've been accosted by feral derelicts too. I wasn't given a CD though. I mean, I've gotten a couple of crappy CDs, but I got those for free when I was DJing at Rutgers. Yeah, what happened to me in New York, I just got some homeless derelict, fished out a jar of peanut butter from the garbage and threw it at me. I almost had to fight that raving derelict, but then the police came and they took him away. Liam Roddy says, everybody remember to like my videos? Well, of course. Larsen, Robert Leonard says, just do a Kung Fail and Michael Icanis. Yeah, I've written him down. I've written down a lot of Kung Fails. I'm going to do him, Papa San Stern. There's a lot of guys I've got written down. Okay, my enemy says, just like heaven is a true gem. Not sure what you're referring to. Okay, Diablo Rojo says, cis white girls can't shoot. Here in Brazil, there's a lot of Latina and black girls that can shoot very well. I live in a poor city. Oh, this is the first time you've commented here. It's nice to meet you, sir. I mean, again, I've never gone shooting with women of the duskier persuasion. I mean, the one girl I went shooting with, she did shoot well. She just had to adjust for the chick lean. But she could shoot decently, target shooting. Just as long as the black girls remember that they put the sights on top for a reason, I'm sure they can shoot just as good as anyone else. Okay, Liam Roddy says, CWC is probably in a halfway house, but nobody's sure where he is yet since everything was sealed because of his notoriety. Yeah, I can only imagine having to watch, the CWC documentary in court. I feel bad for the lawyers, and I really do want that. All the records are released because somebody will get a PhD in psychology writing about Chris Chan in the next 20 years. I guarantee it. Ponythroat says, it's a shame Larsen didn't get to fight the peanut butter hobo. Could have been the start of a real-life arcade beat-em-up. Yeah, I try not to get into fights with, raving derelicts because, I'd rather not have, a rusty nail jammed into my throat. Despite me, practicing martial arts, I try not to get into fights if I can help it. Just, I like to think I'm a sensible adult. C-Punk Messiah says, why is it always rap CDs? Why can't we get a crazy person passing out their black metal demo? I'd actually listen to that. Well, because I imagine it costs more money to make a metal demo than a rap demo. I mean, metal demo, you need, you need guitars, you need amps. Whereas with rap, theoretically, you could just, make a couple of beats on a, public library computer and just rap over it. Okay, Ponythroat says, speaking of POC shooting, during the Rhodesian Bush War, roadies kept finding guns with the sight set to maximum distance. Basically, indirect fire. I, know very little about that other than, slotting floppies. Ponythroat says when they asked the Zanu PF captive or whatever, they didn't know how sights worked. They just thought the bigger number made the gun shoot harder. The red ones go faster, my fellow orc brethren. Liam Roddy says King Cobra JFS is the new lol cow. CWC is old news. Cobra is spiraling. I mean, CWC is only old news because there hasn't been any news about him recently. Like when there is new news about CWC, he's going to come back with a vengeance. Yeah, there's a lot of law cows. Speaking of law cows, I believe, and speaking of cobras, actually, Andrew Tate, I believe, is now under house arrest. He and his brother in Romania. And yes, I will do a video on his crap. I mean, like I said, I don't have high opinions of Andrew Tate just because, like, the really shitty, like, brat people that I've known, like, they like Andrew Tate. So, I don't really. I'm sorry if, like, guilt by association is bad, but when crappy people like something, I tend not to like it myself. Okay. Yes, I will be doing at some point a PU A-holes about Andrew Tate. Okay. Liam Roddy says Reddit is dog shit and its users insufferable. I don't use Reddit. I mean, I have read a couple threads once in a while, but yeah, I don't use it. But what are you referring to specifically, Liam? Hey, Liam Roddy says CWC can never outdo fucking his mom. Yeah, that was a rough day having to look that up on Twitter. Like I said, I was like a pretty hardcore follower of the Chris Chronicles when I was in high school. Then I realized it's kind of weird to be following some essentially like a mentally challenged like loser and go over like every minutia of his day. So then I kind of stopped doing that for years. And then one day I log on Twitter and oh boy, I see some shit. Rick says he has to go. Thank you, Larsen. Yes, yeah, well, thank you for coming, sir. It's a shame you couldn't stay. But yes, it was nice to see you again. Pony Throat says, I have a relative who fought as a mercenary in the Bush War. He died of mouth cancer from chewing betel nut. I'm kind of curious as to how somebody fighting in Zimbabwe could have gotten betel nut, which is a crop that grows in Asia. Did they just bring betel nut there? I mean, is betel something they do in around the Cape? I gotta look that up now. Okay, let's see. Betel nut is a practice which so it's widespread throughout Southeast Asia and Polynesia, Taiwan, China, and Madagascar. Yeah, so it didn't really. I don't know, I guess your relative must have brought a big box of betel nuts. I don't really care for betel nut myself. For the same reason, I don't care for chewing tobacco. I don't find like spitting big gobs of crap on the ground to be particularly visually appealing. You go back and watch your film noirs, okay? Cigarettes and cigars can be sexy. Chewing tobacco is not sexy. It will never be sexy, and neither will betel nut. I mean, betel nuts, it's like, pick your poison. Like, do you want big brown globs of spit or big red globs of spit? It's disgusting. Captain Day After Day says Kung fail on Victor Matveev at some point. It'll be the shortest video ever. Yeah, I mean, I will. That's I never heard of him, but I'll look into him. Ponythroat says, imagine somebody with Andrew Tate's skull shape bragging about how great they are. He was a successful fighter. His opponents could not break his jaw because they couldn't find it. Yes, speaking of Ren and Stimpy, Andrew Tate literally looks like that episode of Ren and Stimpy where Ren, got really fucking buff. His head looks exactly like Ren Hoax. And yes, I'm fully aware Andrew Tate could kick my ass. I don't care. He's an asshole. I know Andrew Tate was like, he was a quote-unquote world champion. Much like regular boxing, kickboxing has a bunch of like, alphabet soup, little pissant organizations. and he was the champion of one of those. So yeah, he could technically say he was a world champion of some little bush league. But admittedly, that is still more than I've ever accomplished in martial arts. I'm just a hobbyist. So yeah, you know what? He could probably whip my ass. I don't care. He's a dick. Ponythroat says Beetle came to South Africa with Indian immigrants. Ah, yes. Indian people brought to Africa literally because the British said black people are not capable of running, machines and stuff. We got to bring in Indian people. Punk Messiah refers to Andrew's face as the cuck-chin. Robert Leonard says the Rhodesian War was a bush war with engagements usually within 100 meters. So, AK-47 sights didn't really matter all that much. Captain Day After Day says Victor Matviv, he flails around and lightly kicks box with the side of his foot. He's on bullshito. Oh, is he one of those Russian slap fighter guys? In my Kung Fail intro, I have a little clip of those guys kind of flailing around. If that's the guy, I know who you're talking about. Liam Roddy says you can't take us all at once. I got your back in a bat. I mean, I can respect Andrew Tate's, accomplishments as a kickboxer while also disparaging everything the man's ever said. I think that's fair. Okay. Yeah, speaking of society collapsing completely, we're going to go to the Great White North, Canada. A man outside of a Starbucks asks a swarthy gentleman, "Can you please stop vaping in front of my 3-year-old child?" The man stabs him to death in response. That's bang up job, Canada. Just in case you thought America was alone in going down the shitter. Yes, Paul Schmidt was murdered by some. I heard rumors he's some kind of weird Sikh nationalist. Yeah, the guy bled out on the street. People just stood by and watched him die. We live in a society where a man is stabbed and people just watch. Again, I can't really judge since this happens in America a lot. So, Yeah, the guy just walked right back to that Starbucks and got a drink. Another guy just stood by and calmly sipped that. Sipped his, crap coffee as the man bled out. Some Canadians I've spoken to say there's a lot of weird random killings, on the train. People being shoved onto the tracks, women being set on fire. I guess Canada, I guess, lasted a little longer and not being insane than America, but it's it's popping off. And yeah, speaking of people pushing people onto railroad tracks, about a year ago, I was with a lady, and I escorted her home on the train because I'm a nice person. And she mentioned to me there was some creepy looking guy there, and she was thankful that I did that. 2 weeks later, that exact guy pushed a woman onto the railroad tracks and killed her. What the deuce is going on in the world? Okay. Ponythroat says I can kick harder than Andrew Tate because I'm a horse. Well, the problem with horses, you can only kick straight. You can't do roundhouse kicks or question mark kicks or hook kicks or nothing. Okay. Ponythroat refers to this as swarthoid behavior and mental illness once again. Yes. Punk Messiah says Canada's been on the downhill since Rush broke up. At the risk of sounding blasphemous, I was never a huge fan of Rush, to be honest. Too bad there's no good Samaritan law, Leonardi says, to charge that TikToker who did nothing but film and beg for clout. I mean, yes. I agree. Yeah, let's see. Speaking of swarthoids, we got a lot of bad shit to talk about today. Speaking of these swarthoids, Telegraph says, the British magazine, periodical, sorry, we're going to Old Blighty now. The English countryside will be studied by hate crime experts to establish whether it harbors rural racism. So bear in mind, this is not saying like the people in the English countryside are racist. It's like the countryside itself is harboring rural racism. I mean, those damn, trees and mulberries and yews, they're just so racist against, brown people. Man, Sneed was never going to recover from this. He's going to have to sell it back to Chuck. And related to this, a Indian lady, Anglo-Indian lady, says, I live in an area where people set up sound systems in the summer. I think it's great. It adds to the vibe and it makes me feel like I'm living in a community. If you want silence, move to the countryside. So in other words, you move to the countryside to escape, random noise, and then they come follow you and they call you racist. Makes sense to me. And, I've seen articles in The Atlantic. It's like, why do white people like silence? At the risk of sounding racist, I'm going to ask the inverse question. Why do brown people feel the need for constant noise? Like, I'm sorry, I don't understand people who just need constant, music. I enjoy the occasional party. I occasionally go to the club and, break it down, which is to say I've been dragged to clubs by ladies, have to, cut a rug on the dance floor. But yeah, I enjoy loud music and concerts on occasion, but there's a time and place for it, and I don't feel this, automatic reaction that's like, oh, here's some quiet. I'm going to destroy it with, brat brap, music. I like how brat brap is quickly becoming Larsen Live's just go-to, feral retard, signifier. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. You want to know a quick way to determine if a culture sucks? Ask yourself this question. Does my culture require constant noise up to and including just screaming for no reason? Not even screaming words, just literally going just wordless noise. If your culture does that on the regular, your culture sucks. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry to sound like some Protestant work ethic dork, but yeah, there's a time and place for loudness. Work hard, play hard. But some people have to go to work in the morning. They can't stay up all night listening to monotonous garbage music. I think that's more of a community Ash Sarkar than just constant noise and sound systems. Hey. Hey, Ponythroat says swarthoids like to fill their heads with noise. They like to echo in so much space. I don't want to say that and say these, people with no internal monologue just need constant noise, but I'm starting to think that might be it. And yet, to be fair, it's not necessarily a white and black thing, although I must point out that the dusky brethren do seem to need constant noise. But yeah, there's plenty of white brappies who need constant noise. I'm not denying that. And it's not really a city-country thing either, because as we can see from the need to invade rural racism, negate rural racism, I should say, they will follow you to the country and bring sound speakers and litter everywhere. Robert Leonard says the entire universe will become one big noise. The Screwtape Devil from the Screwtape Letters. Never read it. I do know that Calvin's teacher from Calvin and Hobbes is named after one of the devils, Miss Wormwood. C-Punk Messiah says some people fake Tourette's or ADHD and treat it as something that makes them quirky. They make random noise. Ponythird says, is Larsen going to use the term swarthoid in his class? I don't know when that would ever come up in a biology class. I mean, I did briefly mention melanin when I was discussing the endocrine system. But yeah, I won't be using that in class. Biff Slankovich says, I spent the day at the Jersey Shore on my high school graduation. My friend's date passed out at Times Square and people just walked over her body. We had to drag her. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, city life does tend to make people a bit sociopathic. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't do that, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just a light in the darkness. Biff Slankovich says, presumably referring to his living quarters, noise in a condo where people think they can yell as loud as they want, no matter who they're living next to. Yeah, I mean, there's a concept of like caring about other people's, basic decency. I mean, me, like for example, like when I practice music, I never practice music after like 9 p.m. Well, I should say I don't practice saxophone after 9 p.m. because, obviously people live next door and people live upstairs from me. I don't want to, because, I have the common decency to not disturb them. I can still practice piano, but I can put headphones in for that. 23rd says it might come up between head measurements and discussions of average IQ in Africa. Yeah, we're actually on the human evolution unit now, and I'm going to very carefully tread to not bring that up. Liam Roddy says every generation of young people seems to be worse than the last. Yes. And yeah, I know that this has been a complaint for a long time. Like there's like ancient Greek, tablets and stuff that, and like even ancient Mesopotamian tablets that talk about, those young whippersnappers. But like eventually those civilizations collapse. So, eventually at some point the whippersnappers do become a problem. I don't know when exactly, but it does. Albert Leonard says he didn't appreciate silence until he started bow hunting. I actually do have bows. I don't have hunting arrowheads. I just have like, target shooting arrowheads. I believe in New Jersey you need like pretty strict licensure requirements to hunt, as far as I'm aware. And I'm gonna be honest, I would never go that stupid like LARP ghillie suit thing that a lot of like the FUD hunters do. What I want to do is get like a English hunting suit, like the little tweed jacket and the hat. It's let me see how much a hunting jacket costs. Oh boy, $435. Wonderful. I mean, it's certainly much more stylish than the American hunting gear. Okay, so anyway, Captain Day After Day says he's been through Asian cities, all day long, city noises, but then the dust comes quiet for a metropolitan area. I don't know how they do it. I don't know, I guess there's still some semblance of like common courtesy and culture there. And again, like I'm sure there's like clubs and stuff and concerts going on, but they go to private places. Robert Leonard says Larsen is the proper chap in tweed. Yes, yes. Liam Roddy says we reached a level of sophisticated weaponry that a collapse seems unlikely. At least one where the population overthrows. Wouldn't that make it more likely if anybody can do some 4G warfare and blow up a oil refinery or a food processing plant? But yeah, speaking of hunting jackets, boy, I miss when Abercrombie and Fitch actually made safari gear. I say as if I was alive for when that happened. Like Teddy Roosevelt on his last his last South American expedition, he actually got strapped up with Abercrombie gear. Hey, moving on. But yeah, I don't know, some people just hate like they just fucking despise nature and things like that. And that brings us to a couple of stories that we have going on now. Yeah, so first of all, in urban areas, speaking of blind hatred of nature and everything good in the world, scientists have created liquid trees, which is a big tank full of water and algae that could be an alternative to trees in urban areas. Because algae, cycle oxygen, and we just dump big fetid pools of algae in the in the city. Because why plant a tree? It's obviously much easier to build a giant festering algae tank than than planting a tree. Yeah, this is exactly what New Brunswick, New Jersey resident Joyce Kilmer would have written about. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a giant festering fish tank of green shit. And by the way, urban bugmen, you are aware that giant festering water pools attract mosquitoes, right? So, malaria is going to shoot up. What genius thought this was a good idea? I don't want to blame just the urban bugmen because, speaking of Ronald Reagan again, he had a blind hatred of trees too for some reason. So why would you want to expand the national parks? Like, if you've seen one redwood, you've seen them all. Herp a derp. I will never understand why some people just blindly hate living things in nature. You know that trees do more than just bring oxygen, right? They cool down the air. They provide shade. Like you can't take a nap under the liquid tree. Young lovers can't carve their initials into a liquid tree. No one's writing poems about liquid trees. Yeah, if I was Mr. Kilmer, I would just. This is why he just stood his head up from the trench and took a bullet to the head in World War One. I don't know if that's actually how he died. Let's see. Okay, let's see. During the Second Battle of the Marne, Kilmer volunteered to accompany Major Bill Donovan, Medal of Honor winner. Okay, scouted out a German machine gun. They found him dead. He was shot in the head. I presume only that Joyce Kilmer, heard of the concept of liquid trees and then immediately just stood up and exposed himself to enemy fire. I don't even. I'm not even that big of a fan of Joyce Kilmer. I guess I'm more upset at the concept of giant liquid, crap pools being put in cities. More than I am upset about the poem trees or anything like that. I mean, to be quite honest, my opinion of the poem Trees is the exact same opinion that Lex Luthor had in Superman 2. It's, what was it? It's like, oh, what's the, it's like Earth poem, Trees, I think that I shall never see. And he's just like, oh, God. He, like, smashes the crystal. Alright, yes, I'm gonna run through the whole scene. I just found the transcript. Give me another one. Miss Tessmacher gives him the crystal. Jor-El appears. The education crystal 108, Earth culture. Jeez, I can't do a Brando. Okay, this is a typical poem, much beloved by the people you will live amongst. Kal-El. Trees by Joyce Kilmer. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree whose branches are wide and strong. Luthor goes, oh God, and he takes the tape out. Miss Tessmacher says, I love trees. Luthor says, just like the average Cocker Spaniel. Again, that's largely my opinion of the poem Trees, but I do like actual trees, and I don't approve of liquid trees. Okay. Let's see. Ponythroat says, speaking of human evolution, do you think of Australian Aborigines had died before Europeans arrived? They would have been classified as human. Well, yes, they would be classified as human, certainly. I mean, not the most advanced humans, but humans nonetheless. Robert Leonard says, Abercrombie and Fitch got out of hunting clothes in the 70s. Hey, Liam Roddy, presumably asking about that issue. Is like, what is your angle, Ponythroat? It's 90 degrees. Yes. Hey, C-Punk Messiah says, a dead body will end up in one of those tanks. Well, I think that goes without saying. Ponythroat says, Ronald Reagan was literally Saruman. Yes. Yes, he was. Ponythroat says, congratulations, scientists, you invented the neglected swimming pool. Ponythroat says, I love trees. American swarthoids grew on them. Yes, let's not talk about this strange fruit. Yes, let's continue talking about urban bugmen. My dear friend Matthew Iglesias. He's very much into debunking, any concept of America being, at any way better in the past than it is now. I'm sure he's a big supporter of liquid trees because he hates, nature. He's the guy, of course, who wants 1 billion Americans. Just bring in 700 million more, third world dregs. That'll make America compete with China. Oh, yeah, speaking of China, didn't India recently overtake China as the #1 most populated country on Earth? I think I read that. But anyway, Matty Iglesias is like, Americans back in the good old days, they didn't have as much money. Their houses were smaller. They didn't have dishwashers. They had fewer cars than the contemporary European. Nostalgia economics is wrong. Yes, because clearly, Homo economicus, he cannot think of anything outside of like facts and figures and stonks. Yeah, he can't possibly comprehend things like stable families, communities, education, low crime rates, not having liquid trees. I don't know how you can prevent your children from not being urban bugmen, but I think we should all try that. See, Punk Messiah says liquid trees is a very soy jack concept. Oh yeah, it is. And speaking of, like terrible, you know, man-made horrors that are beyond our comprehension. Boy, I love that quote by Nikola Tesla. Yes, science has also made giant meatballs of extinct mammoth DNA. Some agro scientists have made some horrifying meatball. Sheep cells inserted with a singular mammoth gene. African elephant DNA was used to patch up some holes. Hooray, we can have mammoth meatballs. It was done at the Nemo Science Museum. Peroshka Vandevu Reuters. I don't know what the hell that is. What is that? Like Swedish? Is once again, to quote Jeff Goldblum, you spent so much time thinking if you could, you didn't think if you should. I mean, to an extent, I am in favor of like the talk people make now and then about like reverse engineering like chickens into like little tyrannosauruses. But yeah, I'm not in favor of giant like mammoth tumors. I mean, I don't care how good the spaghetti is. I'm not eating mammoth meatballs. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna go get some coffee. I say this as a scientist myself. Can we like stop with scientists for a couple of years just so they can get their shit together and not blasphemy against nature? Okay, let's see. Ponythroat says the only liquid tree I care about is the pine solvent I chug after interacting with the horrible modern world. What kind of a loser drinks pine solvent? You gotta drink Fabuloso, dude. Liam Roddy says, I don't understand what is a liquid tree. I missed something. Yeah, I was talking about how some urban bugman scientist came up with this genius idea, sarcasm, that instead of just planting trees in the city, let's have liquid trees, which are big fetid pools of algae that can, they can photosynthesize the same way. And I discussed how, you know, these do not provide shade, they don't cool down the temperature and put water vapor. I mean, I guess they would put water vapor back to the air. I mean, algae do photosynthesize. Yeah, like, no young lovers are going to carve their names into the tree, liquid tree, I should say. And then I made a couple of jokes about Joyce Kilmer, upon seeing liquid trees, immediately stood up from his trench and willingly took a German bullet to the head at the Battle of the Marne. Seabung Messiah says this is a shitty timeline. No wonder we're not getting new Star Fox games. Yeah, when was the last Star Fox game? Was it Star Fox Command? Wasn't there one on the Wii Woo? Uh, I mean, to be honest, I feel like Crystal kind of ruined that whole franchise. That turned it into like weird furry porn. Stick with the SNES and the Nintendo 64 Star Fox. Ponythroat said, I once knew a guy who worked in a supermarket. He saw two guys see who could chug a liter of methanol faster. All right, give it up for Paint Drinking Pete. Ponythroat said the liquid trees are going to be filled with cigarette butts and other garbage. I mean, yeah, they are. And unlike actual trees, I don't think the liquid trees will survive those. I forget who it was. It was a stand-up comedian. He actually had a pretty funny routine about like the trees that grow in between like highway, concrete dividers. He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna show you. You see a tree that can like survive on cigarette butts and McDonald's wrappers and pebbles. Like that's a fucking tree right there." It's like those trees grow up in the shape of middle fingers to the world. Then Punk Messiah clarifies that Star Fox Zero was the last Star Fox game. Yeah. Yeah, I have not played a Star Fox game since Adventures. I mean, I played through Adventures, but in retrospect, it kind of sucked. And then I sold it on eBay, so I made some kid a furry, which is a shame. Sorry to fill your dreams with thoughts of blue fox asses. Anyway, let's get off this topic. Uh, yeah, speaking of urban bugmen, yeah, here's a nice little thing that I saw. And speaking of Reddit, uh, I forget who it was. I think somebody mentioned Reddit. Was it Liam Roddy? This is a direct quote from Reddit. Is any other socialist really uncomfortable with blue collar culture? I find it very alienating sometimes. Skipping ahead, I'm really turned off by blue collar culture and I find it to be toxic. All the, truckers, farmers, construction, mechanics I've met, they're all very conservative. They make, controversial, unpolitically correct jokes. They're stoic and more dude bro-y compared to the well-off people I know in the white-collar spaces I spent my life working in. Is this the result of the capitalist elite, shoving a conservative narrative onto them? Or if there's some need to compensate for their lack of material capital through manly behavior? I don't know. Yes, breaking news. Socialist bug man from the upper class doesn't like the working man. News at 11. I mean, I'm pretty sure George Orwell literally wrote about this in one of his books. Yeah, like Orwell literally discussed how, the upper class, university types are all, in favor of socialism in the abstract. But then they're like, ew, like working people, they smell bad. And, again, this is a pretty common pattern where, in Soviet Russia, for example, the hardworking, kulak or the farmer or, the machinist wasn't really into the communist ideology. So they literally opened up the insane asylums to be their enforcers. And they accused the, the kulak or the wrecker or the petit bourgeois of, having, bad class consciousness. Same thing in communist China. You know, the wreckers, the farmers, the educated people weren't really into the socialism. People who work with their hands and work hard for a living. So that then Cultural Revolution, you got to get the teenagers to kill people. I mean, I've been a backbreaking labor wagey myself in the past, and yeah, I can't say I approve of this Ponzi like champagne socialist guy. Hey, Liam Roddy says this is what I mean. Reddit is full of NPCs. Well, like I said again, Orwell discussed this back in the 30s, so this has always been an issue. Long before Reddit. George Orwell was a writer so ham-fisted it's hard to imagine how he could hold a pen when he wasn't LARPing as a hobo. I didn't know Orwell LARPed as a hobo. I know John Steinbeck LARPed as a hobo. Which Mystery Science Theater actually made a pretty brutal joke about at one point. It was like, what was it? It was like, it's like, hey, don't interrupt me. I'm trying to pretend I'm trying to pretend that I'm poor. Let me, gotta look that up now. So, oh, it's, My name's not Swanson. My name's Steinbeck. I'm up in Salinas pretending to be poor. Yes, that is from the episode of Mystery Science Theater, War of the Colossal Beast, which is an episode most people really kind of ignore because they just want to watch Mr. B Natural. Hey. Boy, this stream's going on long, but I have a lot of crap to talk about today. Let's see what else happened. All right, we're coming to the end, I suppose. Yes, science has wrought bad things all week. Now we can do some interesting science news. Kind of. Okay, speaking of my field, anthropology and archaeology news. DNA confirms the oral history of Swahili-speaking East African people. The picture that emerges is one of Persian, Arab, and Levantine men mixing with African ladies around the turn of the first millennium, each group contributing about half of the genes that are found in East African people today. So again, this is the oral tradition, which they talked about, like the Anglo-Indian explorers back in the 1800s. They were like, well, these are these people, they're mixed with Arabs, and yes, they had the racist assumption, like that's why they're more advanced. And then in the 20th century, all the anthro bug men were like, no, this is racist. And then DNA analysis confirms that the original ideas were absolutely right. This has happened on multiple occasions. They denied the Aryan invasion theory of India, then DNA proved it. They denied that, the Lemba people of Ethiopia were descended of the Jews, then DNA proved it. And so on and so forth. Many, many such cases. So, once again, we got to give it up to the pulp fiction people because, as we can clearly see, the, H. Rider Haggard, King Solomon's Mines idea was clearly much more accurate than the, cuckthropology, like the bugmanthropology. That's what it's going to be called now, bugmanthropology, which is like the Weish, leftist, pots not people anthropology, is once again wrong. I'm not entirely surprised that there was significant admixture along the coast. I mean, horny sailor boys are always going to be horny sailor boys. And it's hardly like Levantine men are adverse to using black women as sex objects. Whoops, shouldn't mention that. I present to you now, sire, a plaything, a most bountiful maiden from Mombasa. Oh boy, chalk up a Thief and the Cobbler reference. And I absolutely train wrecked the Marlon Brando impression before, but I think my Vincent Price isn't that bad. For the zigzag, then, this is the end. Okay, I'll stop with this now. But, yeah. I'm sure that the good men of the Levant don't want to talk about how their ancestors were, shacking up with East African ladies, but as you can see, there it is. DNA evidence shows, again, a pretty clear patrilineal Y chromosome descent from the Levant and mitochondrial matrilineal descent from East African black people. And that's the end of that chapter. Let's see. Okay, we got some comments here. See, first of all, Seabunk Messiah says, not a half bad Vincent Price impression, needs a little refinement. Again, I'm not a great impressionist. I just kind of do it for fun. I'm certainly not going to be a voice actor anytime soon. Okay, Liam Roddy says, MST3K is my happy place. Ponythroat says, this is an example of both races doing what they do best. Arabs violating slave women, and the Africans being incapable of advancing without external help. I didn't want to say it, but yeah. Yeah, when I read that, my immediate thought was of Zigzag, the Grand Vizier, presenting the Caliph, a harem girl from Mombasa. Mombasa is, of course, in Kenya, but it's still on the coast, the Swahili coast. And finally, speaking of movies, writer asks, Ant-Man 3 crashed at the box office after a trilogy best opening. What went wrong? Did you ever consider that maybe the movie sucked? I mean, I didn't see it, but I haven't heard great things. I know that the villain King the Conqueror apparently kicked his girlfriend's ass in real life. Jonathan Majors. Again, Bugman. Not sure if you noticed, but maybe it sucks. Maybe it sucks. Oh my god, why is nobody watching our Cape shit anymore? Because it sucks. You clearly do not have any kind of cohesive plan after, Avengers Endgame. You're just winging it now. That's why you're bringing in the multiverse, because that means we can do literally anything and it doesn't count. There's no stakes and everybody knows it's bullshit. Make some good movies. Okay, Ponythroat says the biggest mistake was being called Quantumania. Yeah, speaking of manias, I believe, isn't WrestleMania going on, right now? I don't know why it's multiple days. I say this as a fan of wrestling. Who wants to watch, 3 days of wrestling? Like, I don't even know who's running the company now. I know Vince McMahon technically came back, but he's kind of going insane. Vince or Triple H or whoever. This is not Woodstock, okay? Nobody wants 3 days of wrestling. Okay. Ponythroat says MODOK looks like Mr. Electric from Shark Boy and Lava Girl, but less realistic. Yeah. MODOK should... I mean, MODOK's pretty goofy looking to begin with, but they made him, look even worse. Again, I've said this before, I was never a huge fan of, Robert Rodriguez's, kids' movies, all that, people just farting around on green screens. I never liked it. It's also my big issue with the Speed Racer movie, which kind of did the same thing. Although, there are things I do like about the Speed Racer movie. I think I discussed this a while ago. And, I will certainly vouch for the Speed Racer movie more than the Robert Rodriguez kids' movies. I mean, I thought that Emile Hirsch and Christina Ricci had very good chemistry. I did like the family kind of dynamic. And look, I'm just saying, any movie that has John Goodman body slamming ninjas has some redeeming value. Liam Roddy says Jonathan Majors' wife is taking it all back. Well, I mean, I guess it's good that he's not going to prison, but let's just keep an eye on this. I mean, abused women do some crazy things. Seapunk Messiah says, when it comes to wrestling, Kaneko Man Ultimate Muscle will not be topped. I never watched Kaneko Man. Jake Johnson asked, what do you think of Chris Chan being released from jail? We actually discussed this earlier. I mean, I haven't really heard from him, I should say, since then. So, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm done with my prepared remarks. If anybody has anything to say it now. Jake Johnson says, her, LMAO. Yes, I can't misgender Christine Weston Chandler. Ponythroat asks, what are my thoughts on hemorrhoids? I've never had one, so I can't really have any thoughts on them. I guess they'd be bad if I did have one. And also, thinking about hypotheticals, know what I just thought of? How would you feel if you had hemorrhoids, but I don't have hemorrhoids? But imagine if you did. I just told you I don't have hemorrhoids, sir. But conversely, I did eat breakfast this morning, so I guess I can't answer that hypothetical either. C-Punk Messiah says, go check out A Fox in Space. It's actually a pretty cool tribute to the Star Fox series. Matthew Gafford is talented. I will look that up right now. Let's see. See, A Fox in Space. Don't call me Star Fox. This quite clearly looks like Star Fox, but yeah, looks pretty decent. C-Punk Messiah says there's no crystal, so you may enjoy it. Crystal wasn't that bad in the Star Fox Adventures, but she just kind of started showing up like everywhere, and I was like, does this woman need to be here? Liam Roddy says thoughts on bronies. They're okay, I guess. I mean, again, like any fandom, some guys take it way too far. I did mention last week I did watch some, Friendship is Magic, because I did want to see what all the fuss was about. This is around like 2012, 2013 when it was like at its peak of popularity. I did watch like most of the first season just because I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I didn't think it was bad, but I didn't really watch beyond that. Didn't go on for like 9 seasons. Yeah, so I didn't watch like beyond the first season, but I thought it was decent. I mean, certainly much better than any show titled My Little Pony Friendship is Magic has any right to be. Ponythroat says Steampunk Messiah is shilling a furry cartoon. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with, animal cartoons. Just when it becomes a kind of weird degenerate sex nonsense, that's when it's bad. Ponythroat clarifies that My Little Pony Friendship is Magic went on for 10 seasons and 3 movies. Woof. Is there that much, like, material you can get out of this? I mean, I do like some of the world building and stuff that I saw in the first season, but I can't help but feel like they're kind of gilding the lily, or not that's the other phrase, like kind of polishing the turd after a while. See, Punk Messiah says he takes issue with the Crystal fanboys. They basically shoved the entire team aside and made it all about her. Yeah, that's what I noticed. Again, like, in Star Fox Adventure, she's cool-ish. You go to the primitive planet, you gotta seduce the nubile savage. I understand that. But then why is this woman like going to the R wing and like flying around and stuff? Like, woman, you come from a tribal society. Like, why do you know how to fly planes? Hey, C-Punk Messiah says he likes Fox McCloud. He's a good character. Yeah, he is a good character. Any guy who, cuts his shins off for like the sake of, having a G-force advantage, I respect that. Liam Roddy says My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is a show for children and autistic adults. Yeah, mean, again, it's a better than average children's show. Do I think it deserves its massive, like, creepy, like, weirdo fandom? Probably not. But I mean, there's certainly worse things like a kid could be watching that are on TV. Let's put it that way. Jake Johnston says, "Isn't buck breaking the black version of Asian sex bullshit?" Yeah, kind of. I mean, the black community does have like sexual issues. Like there are black incels and stuff like that. I mean, there's incels of every race. It's not hunky dory. And I guess, and hell, it's not like white people are any better off. Like, go on any incel forum, you'll see white men whining about white women like not fucking them. I've said this before and I've said it again. Something's got to give at some point. We have like every group of people on the planet being like openly hostile between men and women. This is not sustainable. Ponythroat says the term is beating a dead horse. Surprised you didn't think of that one. Yeah, I'm ashamed of myself for not thinking of that obvious pun about My Little Pony Friendship is Magic beating a dead horse. All right, so again, I'm really liking the, I'm liking the, what do you call it, the audience feedback. I mean, I'm really tongue-tied to name. Liam Roddy says the problem is when adults get involved in children's cartoons. Sexual deviancy is right around the corner. Well, obviously, adults are the ones making the cartoon, but you know, they don't intend for like creepy weirdo porn to be made of it. That's a shame. Lauren Faust seems like a very nice lady. I don't think she would have really been down with the weird horse porn. And with that, I am again done with my prepared remarks. But not yet, because Jake Johnson is going to say something about incels, and this is always a topic I find interesting. Hey, speaking of like pop culture nonsense, isn't the Super Mario Brothers movie supposed to come out like sometime soon? I'll be sure to watch that as soon as I can pirate it and not see it in public. Hey. Jake Johnson says it's funny how people think the incels are all white supremacists when some fetishize white guys. Well, wouldn't that. Wait, I don't understand what you're saying. I mean, incels are weird. Like, some of them do fetishize, like, you know, Chad Thundercock. Some of them are like. The incel landscape is a vast and horrifying one. Ponythroat says they totally do intend for weirdos to fap to it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, like, the people at Hasbro, were more than happy to take the money from these creepy horse porn enthusiasts. But I'm sure at the board meetings, like, they all kind of just shake their heads and try to, like, get past that. Okay. Blaine Roddy says it's because stunted autistic adults with no life prospects channel their sexual desires to cartoon material. Then he clarifies no love prospects, but I think life also works. Liam Roddy says they're going to ruin Mario for us now. I hate to break it to you, sir, but there's already been lots of porn made of Nintendo games. Like, it's literally been for decades. Like, it's not going to be anything new. Jake Johnson says, what I meant was that the non-white ones seem to fetishize white men for some reason. Uh, yeah, it's like this weird kind of paternalistic, like, daddy issue thing that non-white women and men seem to go through. I mean, I guess the scars of colonization don't heal so easily. So just to clarify, guys, if this stream goes to 2 hours, I will just like leave immediately. So you can say what you want, but I can't spend like all day here. Yeah, Jake Johnson says that it's very strange. Yeah, I do. I do know that. A lot of the incels are these kind of like they write these like literal like Chad Thundercock fan fictions about like how Chad is like just swaggers around like Johnny Bravo and just like gropes women and stuff. Kind of like how trans women write these weird fan fictions about like bubbly blonde bimbos like prancing about and fluttering about in sundresses, living like fairy tale lives. Okay, so Liam Roddy says he was down in Arizona. Latinos like white boys. Yes, they do. Mejor la raza, sir. Got to improve that race. And as many people pointed out, like the wokier the brown woman is, the whiter her love life is. C Punk Messiah says he's been trying to cultivate a more confident version of myself that can approach people. In the sprouting stage, got to keep watering it. Like I say, you just got to practice. Like go to the gym, the library, the public place, and just talk to people. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Jake Johnston says, I wouldn't be surprised if some fantasize about being Chad Thunder's femboy BF. Oh, I'm sure they do at this point. I mean, when I did that, like, incel fanfiction video, that was like, what, 2019, 2018? I mean, I'm sure in 5 years they've all become like weird sissified cat boys. Like sissifying hypnosis or whatever. I don't even know what kind of weird Dante's Inferno we're living in anymore. Yeah, so just to clarify, the Mario movie is going to release on April 5th. Why did I think it would be March? Alright, whatever. C-Punk Messiah says we need more Conans in the world. I can interpret that in several ways. Do we need more people named Conan? Because I'd be in favor of that. We could also have some more Conan the Barbarian material. Yeah, we could also have that. Amazon literally canceled the Conan show because it was, too masculine. Jake Johnson said a lot of super woke people are into degrading race play. He dated a feminist who was into being degraded as a woman in bed. I've been in that exact situation. I've known quite a few feminists who like being choked and like spat on and like, smacked around a bit. The girlfriend I had before my current one, she like wanted me to literally beat her. We were having sex, which I wasn't into that, so that's why we broke up. I've mentioned that before. Jake Johnson says human psychology is so contradictory sometimes. It sure is. Alright, so it's been 2 hours, the longest stream I've ever done. Obviously, we had a lot to talk about today. But yeah, I really do got to head out now. So, for Larsen Halleck, I'm Larsen Halleck. All of you have a good day.